Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today on this Friday edition of the GSMC Hockey Podcast. I will let you guys know that this is a pre-recording podcast, so if I do say anything that has already happened, I do apologize. And that really ties in mostly to the first segment, probably not too much for the latter four, but the first segment we will be talking about trade rumors, trade talk for four big name guys, maybe five big name guys if I can fit it in there. And so if they're already gone from their teams that I'm talking about them, I do apologize for that. I am pre-recording this on Wednesday as it is the 4th of July weekend. We got the go-ahead from our boss here at the GSMC Sports Network to go ahead and pre-record, enjoy our 4th of July. So thankful to be able to do that. So if I do say anything during this podcast, last little bit of a disclaimer here, if I do say anything during this podcast that has already happened, I do apologize. I'll get to it, and if there's something big that does happen over the next coming days, I promise you guys, Monday, I'll be back here live in the evening at 8:30, and we'll be able to talk about it, so no worries there. But as I am saying, the first segment is going to be trade talks for a few guys that, have been big in the trade rumors, big names here, and we'll see where they go. Segment 2, then we'll be talking about middle teams going all in, as I feel like it's been a little bit of a trend, and there's got to be teams that miss the playoffs. Who are those teams kind of on the outside looking in, and did the middle teams do enough to really put themselves in cup contention? Next, in my third segment of the night, we're going to be ranking the divisions post-free agency, ranking the four divisions, see where they all stack up amongst each other, as I feel like it is very telling into the season how the divisions are doing. It makes, with this playoff format, it makes it harder to reach the playoffs in a division that's super stacked like some of the Eastern Conference divisions are. So we'll be talking about that. And then in our fourth segment, we'll be doing the Boston Bruins season preview, continuing with my little every team season preview that I started on Wednesday. And then in our fifth and final segment of the night, I will be ranking the top 20 prospects in the NHL. But before we get into that, as always, guys, if you would like to help support the show in more ways than you guys already do, use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. It does go a long way here at the GSMC Sports Network, and we appreciate any little bit of help that you guys can. So use the tips and donations link at the gsmcpodcast.net for that. Without further ado, as always, we're going to get right into this first segment here, talking NHL trade rumors, as the biggest name is still on the board. Martin Necas has made it very clear that he does not want to be a Carolina Hurricane. He doesn't enjoy the role that he has on this team. Now, granted, maybe with Teuvo Teravainen leaving in the free agency period to the Chicago Blackhawks, I sounded so Chicagoan when I said that. For Martin Necas, now he might be able to make way, or the first line might now be open on the wing here for Martin Necas, as he definitely is good enough to play on a first line right wing, and I think that's kind of the frustration that he has had, that he wants to be able to be on that top line, be able to produce for this team and for any team that he's on really going forward. So for Martin Necas, there was a trade that happened during the draft involving Martin Necas. It was for the 4th overall pick with the Columbus Blue Jackets. It was for the 4th overall pick, and maybe there were some more pieces, we don't know. So it would be lovely to see what the Carolina Hurricanes are looking for, but we do know that, a top end forward prospect is really what they're looking for, as that's what would have been available at 4th overall. So they could have gone with a, Caden Lindstrom there. So that's really the comparable for Martin Necas, what they want. But the trade did fall through. It got all the way up to the stages that the Blue Jackets were allowed to talk to the Martin Necas' camp and their agents, or in his agents, to talk about an extension. Martin Necas did not want to go to Columbus, did not want to sign a big-term deal with Columbus, so it all fell through because of that. So Now, for the Carolina Hurricanes, where do you go with Martin Necas? Well, we don't really know. We all thought he was going to be moved at the 2024 NHL deadline. Elliot Friedman did report it, as I mentioned. But for their new general manager, this is a really difficult decision to make. Your first... your first big decision is, well, I guess you moved on from Jake Gensel, and that was a big decision. But your next one for the new general manager, who is, let me make sure I get his name right. It is, I know it's in this article somewhere. Tulsky, there it is. Yep, it's Eric Tulsky is the new general manager for the Carolina Hurricanes. I needed to make sure I got that right. But this is a difficult second decision here that you're making, whether or not you want to move on from Martin Necas. The forward core cleared up a little bit, but you're still having, Aho, maybe a Kokoniemi or a Kuznetsov on that first line. So Martin Necas still might be playing a little bit down the board here for the Carolina Hurricanes, might be playing on the, the second or third line. And I think that he made it very clear that he wants more minutes. He wants to be a bigger role. I think he kind of wants to have that. He is a right wing, but I think he wants to be that kind of Sebastian Aho for the Hurricanes, kind of be the center of every play that is made. Just number one guy. He thinks he's good enough for that role and for that position, and who's to tell him he's not? He's a fantastic talent. He's a fantastic forward, and he is going to be able to produce wherever he goes if he does stay in Carolina or if he does move on. It's a long offseason. They have many months to figure things out with Martin Necas, but as things stand, the RFA is currently not under contract but is qualified by the Carolina Hurricanes. Next player, Patrick Laine, as these two names have been very hand in hand, but for Patrick Laine, we know he's going to be moved this offseason. He is still in the NHL Player Assistance Program. So we don't know if he's gonna, if we're waiting for him to move out of the program or if a deal can be made while he is in. He is able to be traded while he's in the player assistance program, and teams are able to talk to his agents while he's in the player assistant programs. No teams can directly talk to Patrick Laine, including the Blue Jackets themselves. So it's gonna be, well, I actually don't know. I think the Blue Jackets can talk to Laine. It would make sense that they would be able to. But for Patrick Laine, what does he warrant in a trade back? And I think that that's the decision that Don Waddell is currently needing to be made. A lot of teams aren't looking to take on. He has 8.75, I think, is his contract over the next 3 or 4 years. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to move on from that, especially for a player that hasn't been healthy and hasn't had a full season for the last 3 years and hasn't been, that 30, 40, 50 goal scorer that we thought his potential was when he entered the league. So it will be very interesting to see what the Blue Jackets can get back in return for Laine, or what they're going to be able to or if they're going to be able to keep him and convince him that this team is good. Because honestly, if the Blue Jackets add Patrick Laine to this forward group, I think this team is pretty solid. I don't think that they're good enough to compete in the Metro, but I do think that they're going to be a lot better than they were the last few seasons, as they have picked in the top 5 of every pick since 2021, which is not what you want. You want to be in the playoffs, right? You don't want to... they're in a rebuild, so I guess right now, if there is a time to get so many top 5 picks, it is the time. But they've had 6 first-rounders in the last 4 years, and for the Blue Jackets, it's time for them to start winning now. And they got Johnny Gaudreau. Sean Monahan is gonna, Sean Monahan is gonna help them improve a lot. Down the middle, Adam Fantilli being healthy is going to help. Kent Johnson being healthy is going to help. That team can be very, very good next season, and I can't wait to see how they do play in a very stacked Metropolitan division that we'll be talking in this third segment. So moving on from Patrick Laine, the next one, Rucker McGorty. And just overall Jets rumors. Rucker McGorty and Nikolai Ehlers have been heavily rumored to move. It was a very close deal with Rucker McGorty, almost going to the Minnesota Wild. So for Rucker, trade at the draft made the most sense as the Jets were likely to get draft capital in return for Rucker McGroarty. According to Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts, a deal was lined up to send him to the Minnesota Wild, and it involved the 13th pick in the first round. The Wild were waiting to see who would be available before making the trade. When they had the opportunity to take Z Byam, who fell to the 12th, they switched gears and traded up with the Flyers to get Z Byam. So, you know, a chain reaction with, I mean, the Ducks not taking, the Ducks not taking Z Byam at 3, and then the Senators not taking Z at 7 has led to Rucker McGroarty staying in Winnipeg. For the start of this free agency period, I expect him to be traded throughout this offseason. The only question is, what are you trading him for now? As I guess you're going to look for 2025 picks, but you're not going to get a first back for Rucker McGroarty in a 2025 draft. In the 2024 draft, it made a little bit more sense with the weaker draft that it was. But next year is going to be a pretty solid draft, a pretty nice draft filled with a lot of prospects that are going to be NHL ready and be able to make a charge at the NHL. So nobody really wants to move on from their first for next year. So a second for Rucker McGroarty, I think that's a little bit cheap for the Minnesota Wild. So, you know, balance being here talking with the Minnesota Wild, kind of all over the place. Hopefully they can, with the Winnipeg Jets, hopefully that they can trade Rucker McGroarty, because it's clear that their prospect pipeline is a little bit too backed up with Brad Lambert also still not playing in the NHL yet, which has been a shock. But for Rucker, going back to Michigan for a third season in a row left a lot of head scratching, including mine. So we'll see what they decide to do, as I do expect the Winnipeg Jets to move on for Rucker. But for Nikolai Ehlers, it does seem like Nikolai will stay a Winnipeg Jets for next season. He was heavily rumored going into the draft that he would move, but it seems evident to me that they have no intentions on moving him, as they do expect to compete in the Central next year again. And then our last piece in these trade rumors is Jacob Trouba, who was on his way to Detroit. Like we thought that the deal was made, and then at the last second he pulled his no move clause and said, no, we cannot move here. Jacob Trouba signed a 5-year deal in 2019 worth $8 million AAV, and in it he included a no move clause because of his wife. His wife is in residency in a New York hospital, and to move, it would really be to split up a family, and you can't really do that. So he does stay in New York from his wife's transgression, and it makes sense. He signed the no move clause for this, if this were to happen, and it has happened. But now the New York Rangers are in some trouble. Jacob Trouba is going to be playing on their third line defensive pairing, making $8 million, and that is very steep for Jacob Trouba, although he is a talented defenseman. But you can't be paying that much money to a third pairing defenseman and expect to win. I think the Rangers take a big step back in this Metro that looks very stacked next season. So that'll wrap it up for the first segment. In our second segment, we'll be talking about middle teams going all in. And this is the reason that I believe the New York Rangers will take a step back, is the amount of teams that look like they're kind of pushing their chips in the middle, wanting to win now.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm here with my second segment of the night, talking about middle teams, potentially going all in here in this free agency period. The Devils, the Senators, the Capitals, the Predators, the who else? I mean, the Flyers to an extent. The Sabres look to bolster their team. The Tampa Bay Lightning, the Toronto Maple Leafs added to their team. The Boston Bruins added to their team. The Winnipeg Jets look to, well, I guess they didn't really add their team in free agency all too much. But they still are an 110-point team. And then, the Nashville Predators, as I mentioned. The Utah Hockey Club, who is in the Central as well. The Edmonton Oilers. The Seattle Kraken did to an extent. The Anaheim Ducks did to an extent. And the San Jose Sharks did to an extent. Also, add to their team. There's a lot of teams now, and I think really what I'm going to look at right now is the Metropolitan Division here. Because I think three teams really went for it. The Devils, the Flyers, the Capitals, all really, really tried to improve their team. What does that mean for the Rangers, the Hurricanes? I think the Islanders added to their team pretty well as well. Well, first off, let's figure out if it's a good decision. Did the Hurricanes and the Rangers lose enough to where these teams are better than them now? I think the Hurricanes did. I think the Hurricanes might have one of the biggest fall-offs that we've seen in recent NHL memory. This team, an 111-point team, just coming off of 52 wins this past season, losing Teuvo Teravainen, losing Brady Shea, losing Brett Pesce, losing probably Mara Nichaz. You lost Jake Gensel, who helped you out a lot. Jordan Martinook, who helped you out a lot. This team is going to be a shell of its former self, and you're really relying on Petr Kochetkov for your goaltending situation because Freddie Anderson looks like a little bit of a shell of his former self now. The Hurricanes might fall off to maybe bottom of this division. Truly, they could fall off below the Blue Jackets to 8th. The Blue Jackets currently holding that 8th spot from last season from 66 points. But they added in this offseason, they added Sean Monahan. We don't know whether or not Caden Lindstrom will play a part in this team for next season, but I do expect him to, at a point, I think it will be later in the season, but I do expect him to be on the NHL roster come the end of the year, and I think that would be a great addition. You also, for the Blue Jackets, you also have fantastic forwards and great defensemen as well. David Jiricek and Denton Mateychuk should take a big step forward this next season. We'll talk about those two specifically later on in this fifth segment, as I think those two are the best prospects that the Blue Jackets have in a very, very talented prospect pool. You look at this Blue Jackets prospect pool, and it's just loaded. And just maybe not prospect pool, but under 23 pool. You have guys like Kirill Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, Adam Fantilli, Dmitry Voronkov, who might be 24, but he is still a young guy. Denton Mateychuk, David Jiricek, Jordan Malatesta, Jordan Dumais. You have the Daniil Tarasov, Jet Greaves for your goaltending situation. This Blue Jackets team is extremely talented, and let's just talk about it. 5th overall pick Kent Johnson, 12th overall pick Cole Sillinger, 6th overall pick David Jiricek, 12th overall pick Denton Mateychuk, 3rd overall pick Adam Fantilli, who could have gone 2nd last year, and then 4th overall pick in Caden Lindstrom. And then you add Gavin Brindley, Luca Del Belbaluz, who are both 2nd round picks that we are very high on. This team is fantastic, and I think next year is the year that they take a step forward. The Blue Jackets could end up higher than the Hurricanes, and that would be a really, really interesting switch, as the Hurricanes almost had double the Blue Jackets' points from last year. They had 2 less than double the wins that the Blue Jackets had, with 27-52. I mean, this Hurricanes team can take a huge step backwards. So that's one team, the Blue Jackets, that are looking to improve. Next, the Devils. The New Jersey Devils are a fantastic team. They were great last season, and what do? They go out and add. First off, I talked about Brett Pesce, how he was great for the Hurricanes. Well, he's now across the pond, not across the pond, but a little bit north in New Jersey now, which is very disappointing for, the Carolina Hurricanes. Other players on this team, Timo Meier, who's a fantastic forward, Jack Hughes, who has shown that he has taken that next step up, Jesper Bratt, who's fantastic, Nico Hischier, who is fantastic, Andre Palat, Eric Haula, Stefan Nesson, who are all great forwards. You also have Dawson Mercer, who is still an RFA, but I believe they will re-sign him. Then you go out and get Jacob Markstrom to help your goaltending situation, which was much, much needed. Dougie Hamilton looks like he'll come back from injury, which will be huge for the New Jersey Devils. I don't think you can understate that. Then you have Simon Nemec and Luke Hughes, who last season looked to take big steps forward. I think Simon Nemec has potential to be a top 2 defensive pairing on any blue line, and I would be very excited about that. And then you have, like I said, you added Brett Pesce. You have Jonas Siegenthaler. You have Nick DeSimoine. You have great pieces on this blue line. This New Jersey Devils team can be extremely good and one to really look out for next season. I think they did very well at bolstering this team. It was a team that I felt like needed to go all in. This core is still very young and can still put together fantastic playoff runs that we haven't seen them ever do. So I can't wait to see how the Devils play this next season. The Metro is stacked, man. Next team is the Capitals, who is another Metro team. Well, you already have Ovi on the team, right? You go out and get Pierre-Luc Dubois. You go out and get Andrew Mangiapane. You go out and get defensemen like Matt Roy, Jacob Chicherin, who really will help out this defensive core. Now you're paying a lot of defensemen a lot of money. I think they have 7 defensemen making over $2 million. So they do need to move on from somebody. We'll see who that ends up being. You went out and got Logan Thompson, who is a great goaltender from the Vegas Golden Knights. This Washington Capitals team can be very talented. I don't think that they did enough, though. I think they're going to miss out on the playoffs, and it will be very disappointing. But they still have very talented prospects that we saw win back-to-back Calder. Is it Calder Trophy? I think it's the Calder Cup. Yes, it is. But anyways, you have prospects like Ivan Marashenko. You have Hendrix Lapierre, Perrick Dubé. Great forward prospects that could help out this team. And I think that they were a year too soon to go all in. I don't think Ivan Marashenko is going to be as ready as they want him to, or Hendrix Lapierre will be as ready as they want them to. But we'll see what this forward core can do, because if there is a weakness, it is the forwards here. I don't think Pierre-Luc Dubois is good enough to really move the needle for this team, and I'm a little bit worried about their penalty kill, as their only penalty killer is TJ Oshie really on this team. So we'll see what that looks like next season, as I do think the Washington Capitals aren't as good as they do think that they are on paper. Next up, the Nashville Predators. Another middle team that it went all in. They had negative money in cap space. This is how all in they went. They went out and got the 3 biggest names on the board in free agency: Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, and Brady Shea are all new Nashville Predators, all of them making a lot of money. But they also have Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, Gus Nyquist, Colin Sissons, Cody Glass. They have fantastic forward pieces, along with Roman Josi, who is a perennial Norris candidate, and UC Saros, who is one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. The Nashville Predators look very good. The problem with the Nashville Predators is they're currently paying 4 guys that don't play for them money. They're paying Matt Duchene $5.5 million for the next 2 years. They're paying Kyle Turris $2 million for the next 4. They're paying Matthias Ekholm $250,000 and Ryan Johansson $4 million for the next year. So they could have, honestly, they could have gone, the point of saying that is they could have gone out and gotten more. They could have gotten more pieces for this team to be even better, as they do have a long way to go in the Central. For the Nashville Predators, they finished 4th in the Central this past season on 99 points. It was the Dallas Stars that won the Central at 113. The Dallas Stars needed to do more. I think that they'll end up falling off, but the Winnipeg Jets might fall off a little bit, and the Colorado Avalanche, without Valerie Nichushkin, I can't wait to see what that looks like for an entire season, but it looks like they might get Gabriel Landeskog back midway through next year, so the Central is kind of wide open right now, and I think the Nashville Predators saw that and took their opportunity. And the final team is the Ottawa Senators in the Atlantic. In an extremely tough Atlantic, they had the most ground to make up on. They were 32 points out from being up top of the Atlantic. They had a negative record last season. They go out and they get pieces for it, or in this offseason for next year for the Senators. Let me make sure I get their moves correct. For the Senators, they go out and bolster their core of Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, and Claude Giroux with, guys like Linus Ullmark, which is a fantastic addition. Josh Norris, who hopefully for them will come back from the IR next season. You added also, I think they signed David Perron. I think they signed Drake Batherson as well. So for this team, I think that it can be very good if, the right pieces play as well, play up to their potential. But I think it might be just in this tough Atlantic, they aren't going to be able to, win. Their problem last season was their goaltending situation. They go out and get a former Vezina winner in Linus Ullmark. So, hey, that might have improved them enough to where now they're competing in the Atlantic. But I think they're just a little bit far off, and I don't know if they will compete as much as they think they will. So that'll wrap it up from this second segment, talking about the middle teams that seem like they went all in for next year. Next up, we're going to be ranking the divisions post-free agency. That'll show us where kind of these teams stack up amongst each other.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're here back talking with our third segment of the night. We just got finished talking about middle teams going all in for next season. Now we're talking about the divisions, ranking them from 4 to 1 here. And I'm going to start off, and this has nothing to do with the top end talent of it, but I'm going to start off with the Pacific. I think the Pacific is the worst team in the NHL, or worst team. The worst division in the NHL for next season. Might I say that this NHL might be the most talented it's ever been? Like, truly, every team is full of talent, and it's something new, and I can't wait to see how this plays out for next year. I'm very excited for next season, as I think it might be one of the best NHL seasons we've seen ever, honestly. Last year, with the fantastic playoffs, I loved watching the playoffs, and I'm so excited to just get back into more hockey. It finished a week ago, and I'm already having withdrawals from it. It's so much fun to watch. And next year, I think, is full of crazy things that's going to happen, because I believe that a lot of teams are going to take big steps forward and some teams are going to take huge steps back. Speaking of some teams that I expect to take huge step backs, I don't like what the LA Kings did this offseason. I think that they got worse this offseason. And I think that they're going to end up not being a playoff team from their third position. I think the Calgary Flames have entered into a rebuild. I think the Anaheim Ducks and San Jose Sharks are still too young to contend. I think 5 playoff spots are going to go to the Central this next season. So I expect the Vancouver Canucks to be good. I expect the Edmonton Oilers to be one of the best teams in the NHL. And I expect the Vegas Golden Knights, because it seems like the Vegas Golden Knights can never be bad, to also be pretty good next season. But without Jonathan Marchessault, it's going to be interesting to see what the Vegas Golden Knights actually do look like on in reality instead of on paper for next season. I can't wait to do my season preview on Vegas, because I think that that's going to be one of the more interesting teams in the NHL. But for this, before the Pacific, I think that they have 4 teams that are in or just now coming out of a rebuild in the Flames, Kraken, Ducks, and Sharks, who are all going to be pretty bad next season. And then I also think the LA Kings will get worse, around like 80-something points for the Kings, and miss the playoffs. So I have the Pacific at the last. There's not too much to talk about there. The San Jose Sharks were like generationally bad last year, so it's going to be interesting to see, but I do believe that it's not going to look too pretty talking about the Pacific Division. Next up for the for the Central, I think will be the third division here. I do like what the Central did. However, I think the Eastern Conference is way too good. Truly, I think that all 16 teams in the Eastern Conference are have improved a lot, and I think that all of them will look very good. So for the bottom teams in the Central, I think it's going to be the Blackhawks, the Wild, and the Blues. All are going to have disappointing years next season, which leaves, I did say that there's going to be 5 playoff teams in the Central. That leaves, I think the Avs are going to win this division. I think the Predators are going to come second in this division, both on around 100 points. I think the Stars are going to be very good still next season. I think they're going to be around 100 points. I think the Wild are going to take a step forward, because I do really like that core. And then I think the Winnipeg Jets will still be a good team. Or, I already said the Jets. I think that the Utah Hockey Club are going to be pretty good. I really like what Utah did going into this season. You have very great young players like Logan Cooley, Clayton Keller, Dylan Gunther, who are all very fantastic young players. And then they went out and got Mikhail Sergachev, and they added more and more depth to that defense. And that forward core does look extremely talented. And if TJ Ginla is ready next season, let him play, man. That guy can be a very fantastic, just athletic freak for you. So it's going to be interesting what the Central does look like next season. See how it does shape out. I do expect it to be very, very contention. It's going to be in hard contention for the Central and to win it. As I don't think it's kind of dry. A lot of guys are just saying it's the Predators to lose. I do believe that other teams like the Avs, like the Stars, like the Wild, like the Utah Hockey Club are going to contend in the Central. And the Jets could still squeak into the playoffs. I mean, they just had 110 points. But they did lose a good amount in this offseason. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. Next up, I have the 2 Eastern Conference divisions being above the 2 Western Conference divisions. I do believe that the East is so much better than the West. For the second place, it's very close. I might switch it right now, honestly. I might switch it right now. I'm going to have the Atlantic at number 2. This past season, cut and dry, clearly the best division in all of hockey was the Atlantic. However, for next year, I think the Montreal Canadiens are still in their rebuild. I think the Ottawa Senators aren't going to be as good as they expect themselves to be. I don't think the Buffalo Sabres are too ready quite yet to compete in the Atlantic. I think give them one more year and they're a playoff team. They break their drought, but I still don't think that they break the drought in this next year. That leaves 5 more teams to talk about. The Toronto Maple Leafs have gotten worse, considerably worse. I don't think that they're going to be as good as they were last season. They got way older too, on a team that's with a team that's already a little bit too old for my liking. With John Tavares playing on that first or second line, it looks like he's lost a step from his Islanders days. And then you're going out and getting OEL and Chris Tanev, 2 older defensemen as well. So it might look a little bit rough in Toronto. They still will make the playoffs. They're still way too talented to miss the playoffs. But however, I don't it's going to be another first round exit for them. Next up, it will be the Boston Bruins probably at the top here. I think that they did enough to maintain their position up top. They got Elias Lindholm, which is going to be a great acquisition for the Boston Bruins. We're actually going to do a deep dive into the Boston Bruins in the 4th segment, so I'm not going to be talking about them too much here. You have the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup winning Florida Panthers. They did lose a couple of big names. They lost Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They lost Ryan Lundberg or Philip Broberg. They lost Ryan Lundberg. Philip Broberg played for the Oilers. I just tossed those two in a hat together. Both those names are way too similar in my head. They lost Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Ryan Lundberg, and they also lost one more piece to that core that was very important. They lost Kyle Okposo as well. But they were able to keep Sam Reinhart, which is huge for them. So for the Florida Panthers, I think they repeat in the Atlantic. But honestly, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning take a step back without Steven Stamkos. I don't think Jake Gensel can do what Steven Stamkos does. And they also lose Mikhail Sergachev, which is huge. So I do think the Tampa Bay Lightning take a step back next season. They might not make the playoffs next year, and I wouldn't be too shocked about it, especially with the Red Wings, maybe even the Sabres coming up as we expect them to do. So that's the Atlantic. They do come in at 2nd place on my division rankings, and then that leaves the top being the Metro. The Metro has been the most complete division since these divisions really have been a thing, especially because Ovi, Crosby had played in the same division for so many years. It makes it a little bit difficult. But both of them both of them regressing a lot, and I think the Penguins fall off is finally going to happen this next season. They almost squeaked into the playoffs. They were 3 points away from a playoff spot last year. I think this is the year that the Penguins take over as the bottom team in the Metro. I think that the other teams have done so well at improving that it looks a lot different the Metro does next year. So I think the Penguins fall off. I think, as I mentioned, the Hurricanes can fall off heavily, and I wouldn't be too shocked. They might drop 50 points from this season. Well, not 50, but they might drop 30 to 40 points from this season, and I wouldn't be too shocked about it. I think the Rangers could fall off a good bit, but with all of these teams falling off, you also have a lot of teams making some huge improvements, like the Blue Jackets, like the Devils, like the Flyers, like the Capitals, like the Islanders. All have made some big improvements to be better next season. I still think the Rangers hold on to that top spot in the Metro. I still think that they are the most talented team in the Metro, looking at that top 6, and they still haven't lost Jacob Trouba yet, which I do believe is a fantastic piece for that team. They still have Igor Shesterkin in net. I think that team can go back-to-back winning the Metro. I don't think that they are President's Trophy winning next season as they were this past year, but they definitely could be the top team. And then you have the Islanders who look really good, the Capitals who look really good, the Flyers who look really good, the Devils who look really good, and the Blue Jackets who look really good. This division might get 5 teams into the playoffs, which would be which would be a shock with how good the Atlantic is, but I wouldn't be, it's not too far off from saying that. Especially with how I do believe that some teams in the Atlantic will decline heavier than the teams in the Metro. So that'll wrap it up from ranking the divisions. Post free agency, it went Metro top, Atlantic second, Central third, and Pacific is the bottom fourth. When I come back from my third break of the night, we'll be talking about Boston Bruins season preview.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're back with our fourth segment of the night, talking about the Boston Bruins season preview as I did the Anaheim Ducks. The Boston Bruins are second alphabetically in regards to team names. Since the Arizona Coyotes don't exist anymore, the Anaheim Ducks are the only A team in the NHL. We do go by team location and not team, mascot. So, for the Boston Bruins, they have a lot of talent, as they always have a lot of talent, but this year especially, they have a lot more high-end talent than in years past. The Boston Bruins have really made a name for themselves, having that fantastic middle six, along with their fantastic first line. But this season, I think their middle six takes a little bit of a hit. Their first line will be Brad Marchand on the left, Elias Lindholm in the center, and then David Pastrnak on the right. And then the team forward group gets a little bit scary. You have Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha, Trent Frederick, Morgan Geekie, Max Jones, John Beecher, who will make up the rest of that forward group. But honestly, that's a lot of third-line forwards in one. Charlie Coyle, I think, is a third-line forward. Pavel Zacha, I think, is a third-line forward. Trent Frederick might be borderline fourth-line, but third-line forward. Morgan Geekie, third-line forward. That second line's going to take a hit, and I think they'll get matched up, or beaten in matchups when that... Sorry. I apologize. I felt that one coming on. But I think that they will be outmatched when they are out on the ice, that second line. For the Boston Bruins, it's still going to be a fantastic team because of their defensive core. They have 6 very talented and fantastic defensemen. They have Charlie McAvoy, who is one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Hampus Lindholm, who is... Hampus Lindholm's 30 years old. I feel old. That might be the first time I've ever looked... I remember when he was a prospect. That feels weird to me, him being 30. I don't know if I like that. But I was literally about to say they have the young Hampus Lindholm. That was a shock. But Nikita Zadorov and Brandon Carlo will be their second defensive pair, which is a very talented defensive pair as well. And then Mason Lohrei and Andrew Peeke will be the bottom defensive pairing, which is a very, very good bottom pair. This defense will be fantastic. And with Jeremy Swayman, it'll be the core of their team. They might have a hard time scoring goals, but when it comes to the defense and when it comes to the back end, they will not have any problems. It's going to look very, very ugly, a lot of their wins. But hey, an ugly win is how you win games. So, is this team good enough to make the playoffs next year? I think so, but I do think that they regress. I wouldn't be surprised. I thought that they were going to regress last season, and then they went out and got 109 points and finished only 1 point back of top of the Atlantic. Without Linus Ullmark, I think the team looks a little bit different. Of course, you can't run Jeremy Swayman out there every single night, so it'll be a little bit more difficult for the Boston Bruins to get the same production in net in those 20 or so games. that Joonas Korpisalo is going to need to step up. But Joonas Korpisalo in his career has shown that he can be a fantastic backup. There might just be something about him being a number one goaltender that's a little bit more difficult for Joonas than being a starter or than being a backup. So did they regress enough to be, 10 or so points worse? I don't think so. I think this team is still fine. I think the forward core does scare me a little bit. I'll predict right around 100 points. Nothing more, nothing less. They might get 100 on the dot, which will, of course, be good enough for the second or third seed in the Atlantic. Might play the Toronto Maple Leafs again. That'll be good enough to win a first-round series, but I think it's going to look very similar to what it looked like this past year, but just a little bit worse in the regular season overall. They were a fantastic road team last year. That's what really separated them. They were also plus 43, scoring 267 goals. Goals for. They were one of the worst in goals for in the Atlantic. They were bottom 4 in the Atlantic in terms of the overall league for goals for. They were right around that middle tier as well. Finishing 7th in the league in overall points and around like 15 in the league in goals for. And I think their forward group got a little bit worse. And we don't know if Elias Lindholm will be as good as as good as we've seen him in the past. And as for goals against, it was great last season, and I think it's going to be great again this upcoming season. They were 6th in goals against per game last year. I think they can only improve on that this upcoming season. So like I said, a lot of ugly 2-1 games that we're going to be looking at for the Boston Bruins, but that's just fine for the Bruins. What saved them last year was a lot of overtime losses. They had 15 overtime losses, which was good for third in the entire NHL, with the Islanders and the Canadiens both getting 16. It's going to look a lot different for the Bruins. They're going to need to rely on Jeremy Swayman a lot more than they have in years past. I do believe that the Boston Bruins is still a playoff team, but as I said, I don't like their forward core nearly as much. And looking at their prospect pool, it's kind of non-existent, really. They have... Yep. Yeah. They don't have prospects. They might have the worst prospect pool in all of the NHL. There's not even a name to really talk about. Maybe Michael DiPietro. DiPietro. Wow, I am struggling with that name. Their goalie, their 25-year-old goalie that they traded for, but yeah, not a good overall core. They're going to need to keep building through free agency and through trades to keep this team be good. I still think that they are a few big forwards away from contending really for a cup. So I think that they do regress a lot from last year, but not enough to not be a playoff contender, as I mentioned. So that's the Boston Bruins season preview. I have them right around 100 points, finishing about third in the Atlantic. It could drop off a little bit more as I talk more about these teams and give them season previews. Maybe I do realize that maybe the Buffalo Sabres are a better team on paper than the Boston Bruins and move them down a little bit. Maybe see other teams like that. The Red Wings can be a better team on paper maybe as well. So it'll be interesting as I go through these season previews where I do put these guys. I do start with a little bit more of an optimistic view. So maybe I will move the Boston Bruins down as I go through this, but I will keep I will keep it written down where I have everybody at. And on Wednesday when I talked about the Anaheim Ducks, I talked about where I had them at, still coming out of a rebuild. I don't believe that they'll be too good. I think that they'll be right around 70 points next season. So that'll wrap it up for this fourth segment of the night, talking about the Boston Bruins season preview. When I come back, we're going to be ranking prospects, ranking the top 20 best NHL prospects, doing kind of like what they do in the MLB, giving kind of live updates to the prospects as we go through this offseason and as we go into next season. Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're back with our fifth and final segment of the night, talking about ranking the top 20 best NHL prospects, and I do have a graphic for this. So these are my personal rankings, top 20 best prospects. Very subjective. You guys can disagree with me. I would love to hear it in the comments below. No problems with that whatsoever. So if you do have a differing opinion on maybe I missed a guy, whatever it is, leave it down below. But this is my personal rankings. So we're going to get right into this, talking about the first one, Beckett, Seneca. I tried so hard to leave him off my list. Because I just don't think that he is that great of a prospect. But he was number 3 overall in this past draft. And when we're talking about the prospects, I have probably 5 or 6 guys from this draft. Maybe not 5 or 6, but I do have a good amount of guys. I mean, you see Berkeley Catton right there. And on the other side, there are a lot of other prospects too that go into this from this draft. I think that there is a total of 5 prospects from this past draft here. I could have probably added more, but Beckett Seneca absolutely is deserving of a top 20 spot because he's number 3 overall. The Ducks believed in him enough to take him at that spot. So I'll believe in the Ducks' scouts who, are paid to do the job, and I'm not. It just makes sense. Next up is the Columbus Blue Jackets defensive prospect Denton Mateychuk. He had a fantastic season last year, playing in the Memorial Cup, going all the way to the finals of the Memorial Cup, I believe his team did. I believe they did lose out in the Memorial Cup finals, but he had a fantastic season, was around a point per game last year, and this, he's a little bit undersized, but I believe that the Columbus Blue Jackets believe that he will make a difference next season. He will for sure at least play in the AHL for them. Maybe he'll do what kind of David Jiricek did for the Blue Jackets this past year and split time in the NHL. But only time will tell. For Denton Mateychuk, he is very skillful. One of the more skillful defensive prospects we have in the NHL right now. And I believe on the puck, he will do things that we haven't really seen from young defensemen, really. So he's 19. There are 3 Blue Jackets prospects here, and that's with a lot of their guys graduating last season. So very impressive, the Blue Jackets prospect pool. But they just need to produce in the NHL, and we don't know if they actually will. Next up, San Jose Sharks. Quentin Musty here. I believe the Sharks also have a good bit of guys here. With Quentin Musty, he is a fantastic prospect for the Sharks. Played very well in juniors last season. We'll see what that looks like for next year for the San Jose Sharks. Number 17, I have Oliver Moore, who is a fantastic prospect as well. Oliver Moore had a great season in juniors. I actually want to make sure that I get this right. So he plays for the Minnesota, for the University of Minnesota. He was fantastic with Jimmy Snuggerud, a former first round pick for the St. Louis Blues. But Oliver Moore was one of the more exciting players in all of the NCAA. Of course, he was taken. What draft was he taken in? Let me make sure I get this correct here. I do need to make sure. He was taken in He was taken in last year's draft by the Chicago Blackhawks, which I was pretty sure of, but wanted to make sure I got it correct. But has always been a good prospect, took 19th overall, and he really blossomed this past season playing with Jimmy Snuggerud and the defenseman that I keep blanking on. He was a freshman last year. But I got to see him up close. I got to see Minnesota, as I was the Ohio State men's ice hockey beat writer, as I have mentioned on the podcast previously. Got to see Oliver Moore, and he really does stand out. That might be why he's up so high. Next up, Berkeley Catton. Just drafted 8th overall this past season to the Seattle Kraken. Berkeley Catton has a lot of upsides. Out of the WHL this past season, we saw him a couple years ago as one of the best playmakers in this draft, and then he went off and scored about 30 to 40 goals this past year, doing something that I didn't think he had in his game. Proved me wrong. He's deserving of this of the 16th pick. He'll be back in the dub next season. I'm pretty sure of it, as the Kraken like to go a little bit slow with their prospects, as Shane Wright's the next one that we'll be talking about. But Berkeley Catton, fantastic prospect. He'll be in the NHL sooner than later, and he will be making an impact. I believe that wholeheartedly. Next up will be Shane Wright at 15th. The guy that's played on the Coachella Firebirds for a little bit too long now. Shane Wright can make an impact in the NHL next season. I think he absolutely will. Was, exceptional status prospect. Played for the Kingston Frontenacs. He just slipped in 2022 down the board a little bit with the top three being different than what everybody expected it being, with Juraj Slavkovsky, Simon Nemec, and then I do forget who was third in that draft. That's just escaping my mind right now. But goes fourth to the Seattle Kraken. Will be able to produce in the NHL eventually. I truly believe that. Next season, I can't wait to see what he does, as the Calder race next season is going to be very interesting. Next up, Zach Benson, prospect for the Buffalo Sabres from the Winnipeg team in the WHL, Ice Caps. That's it, the Winnipeg Ice Caps. He is a fantastic forward prospect for the Buffalo Sabres. Will be able to produce next season. I fully expect him to be on their NHL roster come this time next year. Next up, Matthew Savoy, I believe also formerly from the Whitecaps as well. Matthew Savoy will be a fantastic, or Winnipeg Ice. It's just Ice, not Ice Caps. Will be another fantastic piece for this Buffalo Sabres core, as I do kind of stick to picking back-to-back, as it's Berkeley Catton, Shane Wright, back-to-back Kraken, and then back-to-back Buffalo Sabres here with Zach Benson and Matthew Savoy. Last season in the WHL for the Moose Jaw Warriors, had 47 points in 23 games played, was a little injured last year, and was kind of bounced around. He played for 4 different teams last year, played for the Winnetoch Wild, played for the Buffalo Sabres, played for the Rochester American for a little bit before getting sent down to the Moose Jaw Warriors, where he did play some fantastic hockey. 47 points in 23 games played. This guy's ready to be a Sabre and will be next season. Next up, David Reinbacher, defensive prospect for the Montreal Canadiens, will be playing on that Montreal team next season. I believe he played another year in juniors last year, but will be ready to go next season to help out that core that's still probably a year or two away from being able to compete in the Atlantic, but to give him a couple of years under his belt before they get to competing will be very good for him. Next up, Frank Nazar, a fantastic 1-2 punch with Connor Bedard in Chicago. Now they add even more pieces to that fantastic core with the number 2 overall pick in this past draft, which we will be talking about a little bit later. But as far forwards go, I think the Chicago Blackhawks are very, very much set with Oliver Moore and Frank Nazar. They're going to be very happy with their forward group and prospect pool. The Blackhawks have one of the best ones, and it's really helped out by Frank Nazar. Next up, we're going to our top 10 now. Owen Zellweger from the Anaheim Ducks, another defensive prospect that is absolutely fantastic. One of the best defensive prospects that the NHL has to offer. I have him at number 10. Number 9, Ivan Demidov, the third guy from the 2024 NHL draft. He's just a couple of years away from being able to play in the NHL, so that's why I have him a little bit lower. As far as, skill and talent-wise, he's probably up around that top 3 or 4, but I do have him a little bit further back because, he just won't be in the NHL for a little while, and I do want to see how he plays in the KHL opposed to the MHL. Caden Lindstrom's number 8, the fourth guy from this 2024 draft. Caden Lindstrom, Blue Jackets number 4th overall pick. I have him above Ivan Demidov by 1 spot because he went above Ivan Demidov by 1 spot. And I do believe that Caden Lindstrom is a better all-around prospect. He has a fantastic two-way game. We saw that for the Medicine Hat Tigers, and I think we're going to see it again next season, as it does seem apparent that he will be back in the WHL for another year. David Jiricek is my next guy, another Blue Jacket, the 3rd Blue Jacket on this list here. Jiricek is going to be a fantastic defenseman in the NHL. He flashed last season at times, but the Blue Jackets elected to keep him in the American Hockey League with the Cleveland Monsters for a little bit, and it did help his development a lot. Next up, Cutter Gauthier for the Anaheim Ducks will be a fantastic forward prospect when he gets his time. He'll be in the NHL next season, and I can't wait to see how he does play when he does get a chance, as he did slip down the board a little bit in 2023, but I do believe that it's a fantastic prospect there in Cutter Gauthier. Will Smith, 5th from Boston University, played alongside Macklin Celebrini last season, and it looked very, very just elite. Overall, Will Smith, number 5, he will be playing with Macklin Celebrini on the San Jose Sharks. Will Smith played in Boston College. Macklin Celebrini played Boston University. I get those schools mixed up all the time, but we'll be playing with each other now. Played against each other throughout their collegiate careers. A little correction there, but Artem Levshinov, number 4, going to the Chicago Blackhawks. Why do I pronounce that so Chicagoan? But anyways, going to the Chicago Blackhawks for Artem Levshinov. He is a fantastic defensive prospect. He is the 2nd best defensive prospect on the board. I'm excited to see what he does look like when he does get a chance at the NHL, as I believe he will crack into the Blackhawks roster next season. Playing alongside Kevin Korchinski will be very, very elite, and I'm excited for. Simon Nemec, another defensive prospect here at number 3rd, the New Jersey Devils prospect, number 2 overall in that 2022 class. We'll be able to prove it this next season, and I'm excited to see how that looks. Macklin Celebrini, number 2, number 1 overall this past draft. We talked about him so much. If you guys want to see my breakdown more on Macklin Celebrini, look back at my mock drafts that I did this past month. He's fantastic. I'm excited to see what he looks like when he does play in the NHL. And then number 1, Matvei Michkov, who just signed the deal with the Philadelphia Flyers to play in the NHL next season. That's some exciting things for Philadelphia. That's going to be a fantastic prospect. And a huge addition to that team, where for a while there it was up in the air when he would be playing in the NHL, and it does seem like it's going to be next season, and I'm very excited for Matvei Michkov. So he gets the number 1 spot in my top 20 prospects in the NHL. We'll keep this updated throughout the season, but that'll wrap it up for this Friday edition of the GSMC Hockey Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. It does mean a lot, the support. If you enjoyed the show, like and follow us on YouTube. Make sure you rate us on whatever you're listening to this podcast on, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever platform you are listening to this on. It is much appreciated. And as always, if you want to keep up with the content from the GSMC Sports Network, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Thank you all one more time for tuning in. We do appreciate it. All of you guys have a fantastic evening and have a fantastic weekend.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of